Good morning, everyone. I'm Matthew Taylor. I'm the RSA's Chief Executive. It's my enormous pleasure to welcome you here to today's Skills 2014 Summit. I'm slightly nervous today because I used to work for the Labour Party and I'm the Chief Executive here, so I'm rather worried that when Michael Gove comes this afternoon, he'll try and sack me. Just a bit of satire there. At least a couple of people got it. Okay, so we're delighted to be hosting today's event, and I want to take this opportunity to thank all the partners who are involved: Kano, Storybird, Pearson, Code Academy, Slate Science, most especially Saul, Kate, and the team at Index Ventures. Without them, we just wouldn't be here and about to embark on this really interesting day. We're also really pleased to be partnering on the summit, as many of the issues that we're going to be exploring through the day are dear to our heart too. The RSA's core mission is to release the creative potential in all citizens, and we do that for a whole variety of ways. And part of our action research programme, two areas I'm just going to mention incredibly briefly. I'm not going to abuse my position in welcoming you to do an advert for the RSA, but I want to talk about our education work and our enterprise work. So the RSA has a very long history. When I say long history, I mean centuries of work advancing debates on key issues in education. We have a family of RSA academies. The core of their work is to try to align two key goals: creative forms of learning with closing the attainment gap. And we use those schools as kind of sites for innovation. We work with them as sites of innovation. We, at the moment, particularly focusing on design technologies, but also we've got a programme called Grand Curriculum Designs, in which we're giving schools the skills to design curricula that are flexible, innovative and responsive to the needs of pupils and their communities. That's education. Innovation is at the heart of our enterprise programme as well. We're going to be launching at the end of this month an innovation challenge known as the RSA Premium, which is designed to find more effective and creative ways to invest in human capital. We're also co-developing a virtual enterprise simulation to help young people experience running a business in a way that helps to build their competencies and skills. So that's some of our research. You can find out more about our work. You can pick up a copy of the RSA Journal that will be available all around the house as you wander around today. Just the final thing I want to say about the RSA is that I was actually in this room 14 hours ago at an event of RSA Fellows. We have 26,500 fantastic fellows all around the world, and there were 150 fellows in here last night, and we were sharing with new fellows the projects that those fellows have created. So 7 or 8 fellows got up and talked about the social enterprises and initiatives they've created, in which we've given Seedcamp funding to. We've just started crowdfunding RSA fellows projects as well. So you can see how these themes of enterprise and innovation and creativity, technology, are really central to our day-to-day work. So that's a bit about the RSA. So I hope that you feel that also this has just been a house where an enormous number of brilliant ideas have been developed. So it's just kind of in the walls. So it's going to be a fantastic day. You can have even better ideas than you would normally have had because you're here. Finally, a bit of logistics. Before the conversation starts in earnest, we're live streaming today's event, so welcome to our online audience. If you want to get involved in the online debate, you can contribute your views by using the Twitter hashtag, which is Skills2014. So please make sure we have a lively online conversation as well as a lively conversation within the building. Okay, so it's now my great pleasure to hand over to Saul Klein from Index Ventures, who's going to say a few words to formally open the Skills 2014 Summit. Saul.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for being here. I know people have come actually from all over the world to have this conversation today. We've got policymakers, not just from the UK, from Labour, from Tories. There may even be some Lib Dems in the room, or UKIP for all I know. That one really was lost on people here. But actually one of the things we wanted to do today was to showcase not just some of the best of British thinking when it comes to skills and the future of education, but as we know, education and skills is a global issue, and there's some amazing people here who I encourage you to meet from some of some of the countries that have really sort of shown the way for education systems. So people from Singapore, people from Estonia, people from Israel, and we have companies also who are really innovating when it comes to education. We have Storybird from New York, we have Tribal Learning from Finland, and in addition to all of us having a great conversation, hopefully during the course of today, there are 3 workshop sessions which I encourage people to sort of dip in and out of during the day, where we have primary schools coming from London actually having hands-on experience with some of these really cool new education technologies that are available. So let me just give you a quick sense of the day, and hopefully this is going to work. I don't know my own password. Anyone from Google here? So what we were actually trying to do with today is to reimagine what a school curriculum would look like in the 21st century. One of the things we all know about education systems is that because it touches everyone's life, it is highly politicized. Everyone has a point of view on education. We have a point of view as parents, we have a point of view as students, we have a point of view as teachers, we have a point of view as Labour, we have a point of view as Conservative. And I think, you know, there are some issues that really need to rise above politics. And it's really sort of the way we think about education. And so what we've tried to do today is really bring you guys together to help us have a conversation, not because anyone here is going to know any of the answers, but there's some great people who are going to be talking today. You know, if you see in the program, we're really trying to say, are these subjects that a 21st century curriculum should have? Entrepreneurship, coding, math, science, design, the humanities. What are we missing within these subjects? What are the things that we should emphasize and focus on? And I think this is really the beginning of a conversation that we hope, you know, by bringing ourselves to a place as amazing as the RSA, where, you know, with its hundreds and hundreds of years worth of heritage, we can sort of stimulate a conversation that people, not just in the UK, but going back to other countries and online, can take forward. So one thing I just wanted to start with was my kids, obviously. So these are my kids at the Tate Modern. We're really blessed in London to have all of these great cultural artifacts, museums. You know, we walk through culture every day. But at the same time, we're now living in a world that the internet has pretty much taken control of. And people in my day job ask me a lot about how is the internet and technology impacting their business, impacting society, and they tend to talk about technology. And this guy, Joy Ito, if you don't know him, is probably one of the wisest people I know in terms of how they talk about or think about technologies. Now the director of the Media Lab at MIT. If you want to follow him on Twitter, he's @Joy, his first name. And he said something I think is really profound, and I want to sort of start off with this because I think it's really important, because we focus too much on tech and coding and the internet, but actually the internet, he says, is not a technology, it's a belief system. And I know that sounds kind of airy-fairy, but I don't care, because I believe it, and I've believed it for 20 years. And I think unless actually we understand when we educate people that you have to think about belief systems, not just about technologies, we're missing a trick. This was the internet in 1969. So, you know, it's the reverse Mason-Dixon line. Didn't actually sort of cross over to the other side. And it's very, I mean, the Salt Lake is in there, but other than that, it's pretty much a California thing. So, you know, this is the internet today. 1969 today. And I think we all know this. You know, the internet now is connecting 3 billion people. And, you know, one of the things I find totally fascinating is that we still think that the internet looks like this. We still think the internet actually lives in Silicon Valley. But actually, the biggest company that the internet has invented in the last 10 years, and I think Facebook is 10 years old this week. There was a great piece Jemima wrote in The Guardian today, I think, about the 10th birthday of Facebook. And there's only one English-speaking city in the top 10 on Facebook, and that's London. And by the way, because Facebook has not managed to make serious advances in China or Russia, doesn't even include China or Russia. So let's be clear that we are no longer living in a US internet. And actually being in London, speaking English, but not being American, may have significant advantages in a century that looks like this, not like this. And the reality is, and you know, I know many people have already seen this chart, which is some work that BCG put together a few years ago to look at the internet's impact on GDP. And the internet is eating GDP. So what does it mean that the internet is now 10% of UK's GDP? What it means is that the internet in the UK is a bigger part of our economy than health, a bigger part of our economy than construction, a bigger part of our economy than education. So the internet is not a technology, it is a belief system, and it is the foundation, or one of the largest foundation stones of our economy. So we better understand it. And then, you know, we have the questions that we've all been wrestling with in terms of the skills gap. You know, can technology help youth unemployment? You know, one in five 18 to 25-year-olds are unemployed in the UK. If you're in Greece, you know, that's 1 in 2. If you're in Spain, that's 1 in 2. If you're in Portugal, that's 1 in 3. I mean, imagine coming out of school and being faced with that, however good your education system is. And then, you know, looming behind this is, does technology actually create skills or destroy jobs? I don't know if anyone saw in The Economist a few weeks ago this amazing chart, which basically, it shows the likelihood that you will lose your job in the next 20 years because of technology. And if you're an accountant, you're pretty much going to lose your job. If you're a dentist, or if you're clergy, you're probably not going to lose your job. So obviously religion and spirituality is a good business. It's a good one to go back into, or a personal trainer, I guess. Maybe it's the same thing, mind, body, I don't know. And here's the skills gap, sort of writ large. This is some work McKinsey did. Basically, the only people who think they're doing a good job training people for skills are the providers of education. Neither the customers nor the people coming through the education system think that they're getting the skills that they need. So, you know, it's all lies, and damn statistics, but, you know, this is what people think. But, and this is why we're here today, maybe we can change education. Maybe there's something positive we can do here. You know, education is a $4 trillion industry globally. $1.3 billion is spent every day on education. There are only 2 things that more money gets spent on every day: weapons and health. So this is important. And this is a slide that, I don't know if anyone read the work that Pearson did with Nesta, but this is probably, I'm sorry to start the day on such a downer, but this is probably one of the most depressing slides I think I've ever seen. So along the bottom is kindergarten to year 12, and on the left-hand side is the percentage of people who love school. Now, you know, my son and daughter, my wife's here as well, and my mum. My dad didn't show up. I have words with him later. And I invited my sister too late, so I'm sorry, Melanie. But when you start school, you actually love it. 95% of kids who go to kindergarten love it, and then it's basically an entropic slide down to maybe you start to see that school's going to end, you know, by year 8 or 9, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I'll get a bit more positive again. So I mean, this is the job we've got ahead of us, basically, is because, you know, you start with this unbelievable enthusiasm and love of learning, and wow, you know, there's this whole world out there, it's so cool, and then, no. And just to go back to Britain for a second, because this is where I live and where I've been fortunate enough to be brought up and educated, you know, actually on this subject, technology, skills, education, Britain has like an incredible heritage. Starting obviously with a woman who, you know, actually the blue plaque is around the corner from here, the daughter of Lord Byron, who's a pretty good writer, and she wrote the first algorithm, Ada Lovelace, I'm sure most of you know her, followed by the recently pardoned Alan Turing, who, although he had to hide his sexuality, won the war for Britain while all the tough guys were out fighting. He was there cracking the Enigma code and inventing computers. Then there was this guy, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who, you know, created the World Wide Web, which kind of took it out of that little pocket of Utah and California. And then, you know, the Welshman who went to Silicon Valley, who wrote the book on Apple in the 80s and then funded a few little companies called Yahoo, Google, LinkedIn, PayPal, and YouTube. Pity he didn't do that here, but, you know, maybe in his next life. And then the other guy who grew up in Chingford, studied at Newcastle Poly, and then was persuaded by Steve Jobs to come and reinvent Apple. So we got some, like, quality heritage here. And actually, we've got some real quality technology, because in Cambridge, you have ARM, who basically designed the brains for mobile computing. Actually, we have here guys from CSR today who are the, you know, the global innovators in Bluetooth. And then obviously, you know, my son told me I had to wear my Raspberry Pi t-shirts today. You know, the blueprint for low-cost computing is also being developed in Cambridge. So, you know, maybe if we remember what a wise man said, which is not just about technology and it's not just about arts, it's about being at the intersection of technology and the liberal arts, which we know being in the RSA. And, you know when you walk around London and you see Newton and, you know, the Victorians actually were masters at this. Maybe, just maybe, kids like Kelvin in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, you know, will be able to have a $99 computer that can change the lives not just of the people who live in Santa Monica and Hampstead, but in Freetown and Santiago. And all of that will be possible. And I just want to go back to politics for a second, because as much as I'd love to live in a country that could get over politics, it doesn't seem that I can. But Eric Schmidt gave us a great challenge in Edinburgh in 2011 in the UK, and he said, you guys have this heritage, but why the hell aren't you training engineers and developers? And whatever we think about politicians, you know, actually our politicians rose to the challenge. And from this September, you know, we're going to be the only country in the UK, other than Estonia, that requires teachers to teach kids from the age of 5 up how to code. And we're going to debate whether that's a good idea today, but it's going to happen. So we should probably just all get over ourselves on some of these issues and at least, you know, for 5 seconds say thanks to Michael Gove for taking the credit for this. And thanks to George Osborne, hopefully, for paying for this. And thanks to the Labour government, who's going to come in next, for making sure it really works. So that's all I'll say about politics. But I think, you know, the reality is we've got to give kids a vision of this, because that's how they start kindergarten. And it's our responsibility, I think, to help them see like how much potential there is out there. And before we start the first panel, does anyone here know Wood Green? A couple of people. Has anyone here been to Wood Green? A couple of people. Okay. I want to just play you a short video from a resident of Wood Green who I think is really lucid on the subject of education. Unfortunately, he would love to have been with us today, but he's taking a round-the-world trip for 80 days. You know, he started at the Reform Club, and he'll be back in London in 80 days. And this is what he's got to say. So, apologies from Sully, because he did really want to be here. If you want to follow him on his 80 days around the world, he's going to 16 different countries. He's in Tel Aviv at the moment. He's going to Istanbul next, then to Ghana, then to South Africa, then to China, India, etc. And obviously he will visit LA and San Francisco to see where it's really done. He's at Sully Breaks on Twitter. So what I'm going to do is now invite up our first panel. So we've got Saul Singer, Saul, please join me, from Israel, and Neil Hopkins, and George Burgess. And the first subject on today's curriculum, and I think, you know, we really do want to treat this as a discussion and a conversation, is entrepreneurship. And, you know, obviously we don't teach entrepreneurship in schools, but, you know, we hear a lot about how, you know, entrepreneurship and innovation creates jobs. You know, we know that, you know, Saul, if you haven't read his book, he wrote a book called Startup Nation. It's basically a book about how, in the last 25 years, to put it bluntly, Israel changed from being an exporter of oranges and grapes. You know, those of us who grew up in British supermarkets, you know, Jaffa oranges were a big treat when we were growing up. Grew into a country in 25 years that switched from agriculture to technology, and 40% of GDP now, I think, is high tech. And he brilliantly documented that story. So, you know, entrepreneurship can be a national pursuit, not just an individual pursuit. But we also have George, who, at the age of 17, at my old school, decided that he didn't have a good way to revise for his geography A-levels. So as any enterprising student would do, I think he hired a developer remotely from Pakistan. Obviously, GCHQ wasn't watching you. And recruited your geography teacher to help develop the curriculum, and started a business, as any 17-year-old who, you know, couldn't figure out how to revise properly would do, and then got into Stanford, the seat of innovation and entrepreneurship and technology, but decided to quit Stanford to pursue his business, come back to London. And then Neil is a teacher. And, you know, one of the things we really wanted to make sure today is that, you know, while you'll be able to hear the voices of kids in the different workshops, as I know very well, when we live in the world of sort of entrepreneurship, we always think that we know how to disrupt industries. And the reality is that, you know, we pretty much never have people in the room who actually know what's going on. So Neil is a teacher who I know feels passionate about this topic, and I think, you know, collectively, hopefully, we can share some perspectives, and then we can have a discussion. But the subject of this lesson is, can you teach entrepreneurship? So, Saul, why don't you start, give your view on that, and we'll move on from there.
Thank you, Saul.
I've done that. It's a bad handover. Right? The BBC guys would have said, go to George.
So, in a way, the book Startup Nation was about this question, really. It was about, you know, what makes Israel innovative, what makes a country innovative, and that question really boiled down to something fundamental about innovation, which is, you know, we think that it's about ideas, and you see this because if you put the word innovation into Google Images, you do a search for pictures of innovation, you'll see lots of light bulbs will pop up, and that because the symbol of the idea is the light bulb. So we think innovation is about ideas, but I think what Israel and every entrepreneurship, every innovation sector shows is that it's not really about ideas. There are great ideas everywhere. It's about what you add to the idea. And the two big things you have to add are a lot of drive and determination, and a lot of willingness to take risks. And so the book ended up being, where does Israel get a little bit more of those two things? Which is essentially the question of how did Israel teach entrepreneurship? And of course, the irony is that we didn't teach it so much in our schools, because, you know, entrepreneurship is really about exactly the topic of this conference. I love the word skills in the title of the conference. There's a reason for that, because, you know, we're talking now about 21st century skills. And what are all those things? They're the things we don't learn in school, basically. Things like leadership, teamwork, strategic thinking, decision-making, emotional intelligence. And Israelis learn these things, but they learn them through the culture, through the history, through the place that they live. For example, the fact that Israel itself is a startup. It started from an idea, and it took a lot of drive and determination to turn that into reality, a lot of willingness to take risk, and not just 100 years ago, but continuously. So Israelis grow up kind of knowing that this is the way you have to be in a country like Israel. So they get it that way. And the military has been, for us, a very important part of our story, where Israelis go for these 2 or 3 years in their life, a stage in life that a lot of people in other countries don't go through. In most places you have, you know, school and you have work. And in Israel you have school and the military and work. And in that little period they get all those entrepreneurial skills. It wasn't designed that way, but they get leadership, teamwork. I would also say sacrifice. The idea of sacrifice the idea that there's something more important than yourself when you're 18 or 19 is kind of a new idea, but that's something you pick up in the military. So that's been a huge factor for us. And so I think the answer is yes. I mean, you can certainly, I would break it down into two pieces. One is teaching how to do startups, and there's so much great stuff out there. You know, the lean startup method, you know, and how that's become this whole curriculum coming out of Steve Blank's work and all this stuff that you can get online, how to do that. That can certainly be taught. But then the question is, how do you teach all those skills, those soft skills?
So Neil, can I mean, ask you with that in mind? I mean, I think what I hear Saul saying, and it's interesting when you think about the US, who's been incredibly successful when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, certainly over the last 100 years, there's an idea. There's like a value system. Whether you agree with that idea or not, there's an idea that is bigger than, you know, passing school. There's an attitude. I mean, first of all, how do you think about these subjects in the classroom? And secondly, you know, is one of the challenges that we're missing, certainly in the UK at least, and I'd be interested to hear from other people from other parts of the world, how much is a value system and a set of ideas, you know, important in sort of driving behaviours as well?
Well, the value system is crucial. The problem is that we already have a value system, and it's represented in some sense by both of the opinions that we've heard expressed this morning already, insofar as the slide where you showed children, look, that's what's out there. 4-year-olds already know that's out there. They're not constrained by the parameters of social protocol. They're not constrained by somebody else's agenda. They have their own agenda. If you think teenagers are single-minded, try arguing with a 4-year-old.
I do.
They know exactly what they want, and they don't care who they're going to take prisoner to that. So the problem is that what school does is it takes in these amazing entrepreneurs, people that are very free thinkers and unconstrained, and systematically over a course of years until we see that graph plot declining, we actually drill that out of them. And we educate them away from what they naturally came with. So the whole premise that actually what we need to put in place is particular skills is wrong. It's starting from the wrong point. The whole point is that the children at 4 already come with those skills. What we need to do is to rethink what we then do when we have them in our classrooms between 9 and 3. So Saul, I agree with you. I think it's absolutely crucial that they've got these 21st century skills of leadership and teamwork and strategic thinking. The problem is that the curriculum that we put in place in almost every country is actually predicated on not delivering those skills and delivering knowledge, which we elevate to a very high status. But it doesn't have to be that way.
But I mean, I will hear from people later on today from Google, and you know, we have folks in the room from Google, from Pearson, from the BBC, etc. And I mean, knowledge, I mean, and maybe it's a good segue to George. I mean, knowledge now is accessible to a point of, like, you know, just understanding how to put a query into a search engine or look up on Wikipedia. Now, I'm not saying that is the sum total of knowledge, but knowledge is a lot more available to us. And I'm just wondering, George, you were sitting in a classroom as a 17-year-old. You know, what sort of made you feel, what motivated you, other than sort of the need of, I need to revise for my A-levels, to sort of go out and create this business? And, you know, how did your school, I mean, just as an anecdote, you know, what did your school say? I mean, what did your teachers say?
So I had actually been running some businesses for a few years before I started Gojimo. So it was, for me, it was a very natural progression from something I'd done previously. What was interesting is that at the school there was no sort of formal support system for people or students who were engaging in entrepreneurship. There were definitely, you know, some teachers who were very supportive, such as the geography teacher who caught me emailing a Pakistani freelancer during his lesson. I didn't get in trouble for that. Sorry, I didn't get in any trouble for that. He ended up, becoming the closest thing I had to a co-founder. So that was an interesting story. But there were also, there were teachers there who actually disapproved of some of this. Prior to Gojimo, I was running a filming business with a friend, and we would film plays at different schools around London, and we'd sell the DVDs on to parents. And while we had a lot of support from a lot of people because we were undercutting everyone else who did it, we also had a lot of teachers who were pissed off about this because they saw us profiting from other people's work. So it is interesting, when you're dealing with teachers in an academic setting, many of whom feel they're contributing a huge amount to the community. There is sometimes a bit of a collision when you bring entrepreneurship and business into that setting.
So, Neil, do you want to, because I think what you're saying is really interesting. And as a parent, I'm thinking, wow, I'd love to send my kids into your school system. So you're Michael Gove, you're Stephen Timms, you're someone, how do you do this?
Well, you don't do what we've done. What you don't do is elevate the position of knowledge above everything else. What you do is focus very carefully on the skills. And what you do is encourage schools to embrace that leadership and teamwork and strategic thinking, to embrace the voice of the student, the voice of the pupil. So that if George was 4 years old and already showing those emergent signs of wanting to be an entrepreneur in a reception age class, a kindergarten class in my school.
What are the signs of a 4-year-old entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, look at most 4-year-olds and you'll see that. You'll see their ingenuity. You'll see the fact that they can lock on to particular areas of interest. And you'll see the way that they start already to manipulate their social environment, and so that they can make affiliations and collaborations. What you do as a leader of the education system is you make sure that schools concentrate on pedagogy. And that's what, in this country at least, but in many countries across the world, that's what we're getting wrong. We're focusing on the curriculum. And the curriculum is a content that governments are very keen that children learn. And of course that's important. I'm not saying that knowledge isn't important. But the important thing is recognizing that knowledge, some of it which will be core, but some of which will be temporal to a certain extent, actually sits within a much more important framework, which is the skill set that the children have. So make sure that children are learning in a collaborative environment. Make sure that children have an opportunity to co-construct their curriculum, so that George can actually bring his passion into school when he's age 4 or 8 or 11, and actually do something with that under the guidance of the teachers, that they'll help him to develop those particular skills. And I'd have to say, another thing that schools ought to do is to recognise that they're not the experts. So that actually, when George comes to school with a particular skill set around perhaps filmmaking, he is able to do something to lead other people's learning, and so that adds another aspect to his skill set and enriches the whole school environment. What you don't do is prescribe a curriculum, and you don't regulate around the content of that curriculum. You look to nurture a system of children that can be inspired and be inspirational.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that the way you teach entrepreneurship is really you don't teach it, you do it. and that's really, if you kind of get down to what happened to George, what Suli was talking about in terms of all these people dropping out of school, it's because they want to do it. And that's the only way they know how to learn. And the beautiful thing is that how do you teach a 4-year-old entrepreneurship? What is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is someone who sees a problem as an opportunity, basically. And that's what 4-year-olds do naturally. They see problems and they start solving them. They want to solve them. And so what school has to become is a place where that happens, where you let kids solve problems. And that makes them entrepreneurs. And the amazing thing about our world today is that, a few years ago, it wasn't so possible for kids or anybody to solve problems kind of in real time, like over a weekend, like this whole startup weekend movement, where you can go from an idea to minimum viable product in 50 hours, you know. But now you can do that. You can start coding when you're 4 years old or whatever. You can do everything.
I think we'll hear later this afternoon when we talk about science and design, you know, with 3D visualization and printing. I mean, you can literally go from what's inside your mind to producing a physical object. So, I mean, all of this is changing. I think, you know, what's interesting to me is, like, it sounds like, and I'd love to hear some opinions from people in the audience, that if we're designing the curriculum, which sounds like we shouldn't be designing curriculums, but let's just say we still have to do that for the next 15, 20 years, we probably don't want entrepreneurship on the curriculum because it's an attitude as opposed to a set of skills. Is there anyone who wants, sorry, can you just, I think we're going to have a mic because they're recording, and just maybe stand up and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Robert Stevenson, from Dublin originally, working out of London, and I'm the CEO of Blastbeat Education UK. We teach entrepreneurship to the most difficultly, or shall we say, the kids who are most disadvantaged in London, West Midlands, etc., who are particularly in that age, sort of year 10 bracket, where they are the most, you know, get to the point where they want to leave school, the 3Ds, the disappeared, disillusioned, disaffected kids. It's about inspiring those kids completely. Unfortunately, as you've all said, the education system is not fit for that. There should actually be a place in the curriculum, if you like, when I say a place, a time when young people can actually learn entrepreneurship. And they can. There are programs, I know, because we run one very successfully. We're funded by the Lottery and Barclays and other people to do it. And it's about giving the kids have fun learning because they want to, taking on the jobs they want to, and setting up and running their own events, putting on music events, selling tickets, making videos, doing the whole shooting match, but owning it, taking responsibility for it. The results are amazing. Now, why the British government don't set aside time in the curriculum for people, young people, to be able to do this, I just can't understand, because they do in most other European countries, including Ireland, where there's a transition year, there's a year where you can do this type of stuff. So that's a question, but there is definitely a need for this, and it should be a national programme. And you know, we struggle to get into schools because they're so focused on the curriculum. So we run this as an after-schools programme, and it totally frustrates me trying to talk to some head teachers. Now, luckily, there are some enlightened ones, but there's many who are not. And they think that if it's not on the curriculum, if you're not going to get an exam and points at the end of the day, it's not worth doing. And this is a terrible problem.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to, there's someone at the back there.
Hi there, my name is Christiana Camzotti. I'm co-founder of Silicon Milk Roundabout, which is the UK's largest jobs fair for tech startups. I don't know whether any of you are aware of a young lad called BJ Mulenga, who set up SuperTuck. He was 14, he's now 18. He actually came to see me the other day, and I was completely inspired by him. He's over there. In fact, let me stand up. He can tell you all about what he's done, because I actually think that we could learn a lot from him.
See, it's a younger entrepreneur than you.
Hi, everyone. So, funnily enough, when I was studying business for the first time, I actually was always a curious thinker. So, naturally, I understand that whole dip that you've just explained, where you start with this kind of level of enthusiasm, and as you go down the years, you kind of lose that enthusiasm because you're always put in a box and told to stop at the red light. So getting to year 7, year 8, age 11, 12, naturally I become class clown, and I'm just very frustrated because there's nowhere for you to put all your creativity. And from being aware of things going on in the world and being very well versed and well educated and actually being able to do things in your own terms, by the time I hit the age 14 and I hit that pivotal moment where it was like, am I going to stay in school? Am I going to leave? Am I going to actually excel my GCSEs? I decided to challenge myself, study business for the first time, and it was a situation where we were told, this is how businesses run, this is how you should do things. You had a big priority to study English and maths and science, but there was no priority to actually go out and learn these academic subjects firsthand. So I set myself a challenge to actually run a business whilst in school, because you don't have a national insurance card and you can't work in retail and you can't make no money legally. So the question I went about answering was, how do I make money fast in school and operate? And naturally, for years, there's been students selling things out of their bags during break time. Ever since Jamie Oliver, ever since Jamie Oliver like put the stop on healthy food. But literally, I decided to legalize the black market. I went to my secondary school head teacher, I pitched a campaign, I went there maybe 3 or 4 times, and I officially got allowed to run my own shop with my peers. By the end of the year, we made £15,000, and we were all 15. We were literally selling £100 worth of snack. It was a table, it was a very slick operation. And at the same time, we were studying business, and we were able to apply cash flow, organizational structure. We were able to apply these fundamental skills that we're learning for the first time. And that was the real first time I was able to actually learn about doing things. So really,
maybe the skills you're talking about, you know, it's not about entrepreneurship, it's about some of the business basics, cash flows.
But most importantly, it's about curiosity. So by the time I was 16, I was consulting for brands, and I worked with Nike. I actually did Google Hackathon at one point. And the interesting spectrum was, when I was 16, I was going back to these schools and I was telling 14-year-olds, I'm 16 and I'm working with these brands. Why are you not curious? And I must have...
Well, I think what Neil's saying is similar to you. It's like, you know, when you're 4 or 5, you've already got that innately in you, and then you have to wait until you do what you're doing. And I mean, I know about 10 years ago, my dad's a governor of a school called RIL I think that's in Camden, and they did a competition for 8 and 9-year-old kids to do a business plan and make something. You know, kids loved it. I mean, you're not too young to do it. As an 8-year-old, never mind as a 14-year-old. So
this is exactly the point, and the point that you're making. The curriculum has basically gotten in the way of learning because, you know, like you learned about cash flow by doing cash flow. I mean, that's how, rather than sitting in a classroom and learning about cash flow, you can basically, you know, if there's knowledge and there's skills, there's no reason why we can't gain both the knowledge and the skills by doing everything, by doing projects of all kinds. It doesn't always have to be business. There are all kinds of projects. And that, I think our goal should be to gradually replace the curriculum, which is this kind of trying to just transmit knowledge, and replace it with a process where it's almost everything is by projects and doing.
And as the gentleman down here was saying, Saul, the point is, and you're saying here, Saul, it is about applied learning and having it within the curriculum. We have a school shop that every class within the school gets to run and operate. And so 4-year-olds last week made £160 within that school. Now, they had to get a loan from the school to do that. They have to negotiate with that with the school business manager in order to do that. They have to make their own products. They have to market it, see how successful that is on Monday, and then readapt their products and maybe their marketing for Tuesday because they didn't manage to sell anything. Those kind of skills are ones which should be right at the heart of whatever the curriculum might be.
I mean, you know, the irony of the 10% number, I mean, we can sort of pat ourselves on the back and say 10% of the UK economy is the internet. All that means is we shop a lot on the internet. It means we've turned from a nation of digital, or turned from a nation of shopkeepers who, you know, people know how to buy, sell, trade, do business, into a nation of digital shoppers. So I know there are a lot of people who want to ask questions. My mom wants to ask one first, so yeah? Okay.
So I'm a speech and language therapist specializing in dyslexia, and the research today shows quite conclusively that you have to teach little ones formally to read and to be numerate, and you can build your creativity on that. But don't throw out literacy and numeracy as a basic skill.
I don't think that's what I'm suggesting at all. The whole point is that it's about applied learning. So we don't want to get rid of a curriculum, nor do we want to get away from core skills. And what I was saying earlier was, yes, of course you need core skills. This isn't a move towards some woolly, airy-fairy kind of curriculum. It can't be that. It actually has to be very rigorous and applied.
We've got maths later on in the day, and we got, there's a brilliant company called Storybird that is around creativity and storytelling. So I think, I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I do want to be slightly Swiss about this, and we're coming up to, the next lesson. So for those of you who have questions, we're going to have a chance in all classes to ask questions, and if this is an entrepreneurial school, you'll ask questions from the first class to people in the second class, and we're also going to, when my daughter looked at the schedule this morning, it's like, why have you got all these breaks? So there's time for people to also talk to one another as well, but so we can stick to time, can we just say thanks to the first panel?